Tariffs are a bad idea, and here's why. My name's Tyler. I've spent the last 15 to 20 years navigating global supply chains, working in procurement, and today I really want to talk about something that's got a lot of us in the industry deeply concerned, and that's the idea of entering into a trade war with our closest neighbors and key trading partners. This is in general a poor decision, but I want to break down why it's a poor decision, focusing on the facts while drawing on some historical examples that we can all learn from. So, first and foremost, tariffs are taxes, plain and simple. When a government imposes tariffs on imported goods, it is essentially adding a cost to those products entering the country. And who pays those costs? Well, it's the importer. But you don't need to just take my word for it. As the Bank of Canada has pointed out, tariffs on exports will be paid by the US company buying those goods. And those companies will in turn pass on at least some of those costs to the US consumers. The same applies to the retaliatory tariffs that Canada, ourselves, and Mexico will of course inevitably impose. It's not abstract economic theory, it's real dollars coming out of the pockets of businesses and ultimately the households that rely on those goods or services. The worst part is we're already seeing damaging effects of the trade uncertainty. Governor Macklem of Bank of Canada highlighted in a recent speech that since the threats on tariffs have really started to come around, the uncertainty has increased sharply. This uncertainty alone is causing harm with consumer confidence, falling sharply in both Canada and the United States. Businesses are also feeling the squeeze, with many reporting that they're delaying or canceling investments, and they're scaling back on hiring, largely due to the unpredictable nature. This really mirrors historical situations where trade policy shifts have led to economic disruption. And if we think about where I am, specific sectors, Alberta, right? A potential 10% tariff on energy exports, as mentioned by Governor Macklem, is a major concern, potentially putting downward pressure on Canadian energy prices and reducing the profitability of the Canadian energy producers. This has a knock-on effect of potentially leading to decreased investment, employment, and similarly, the 25% tariff on steel and aluminum will disrupt industries in Ontario and Quebec, leading to reduced output and increased prices. And remember, in these sectors, we see goods actually cross the border multiple times. So we will see echoes of this in history. For example, the American Civil War, right? The US maintained high tariffs on steel, and they really wanted to protect domestic industries. But really, what wound up happening was we saw increased costs for consumers and businesses that ultimately wound up relying on those inputs. The ag sector is also facing significant uncertainty with potential tariffs impacting farmers on both sides of the border. And other trade actions like China's tariff on Canadian canola oil really reminds us of where we have seen domestic protections in the past with things such as the British corn laws, which ultimately increased the price for grain for the end users, while it was initially meant to at least protect the agriculture sector. But here's a crucial point that many people miss. Tariffs don't just directly increase the cost of the imported good, they also create an environment where domestic producers can raise their own prices. Let me give you a very clear example of this. So, if we imagine a tariff is imposed on widgets that we manufacture, increasing their price by 20% initially, the domestic widget manufacturers might keep their prices the same initially, enjoying that competitive advantage. However, over time, as the cost of the imported widget remains high due to the tariffs, the domestic producers will realize that they can slowly increase their prices and still remain competitive with the now more expensive imports. So slowly but surely, the price of the domestically produced widgets will creep upwards, often not by the full amount of the tariff, but a significant portion, meaning the consumers end up paying more across the board, not just for imported goods. This erodes any perceived benefits of protecting domestic industries, as it simply leads to higher cost of living. So furthermore, economists have largely agreed that tariffs are self-defeating and have negative effects on economic growth and economic welfare. So while the intention might be to protect specific industries, tariffs can backfire. By raising input costs for other domestic industries that rely on those now tariff goods, and through retaliatory tariffs that harm export markets. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act during the Great Depression is a stark reminder of how widespread tariffs can lead to a significant decline in global trade. While economists debate maybe the extent of its impact on the depression itself, it is undeniable that it's heavily contributed to a climate of protectionism and retaliation. So another thing that we need to do, I think, is really consider the political motivations behind the tariffs. So if we think back to the U.S. Tariff Act of 1789, it was initially even called the Second Declaration of Independence, and it aimed to establish this economic independence. However, the long history of tariffs in the U.S. That one can easily reference if you take a look at Wikipedia, for example, will show a constant push and pull. And that push and pull exists between these protectionist measures, so designed to favor the U.S. in this instance, and the benefits of the lower trade barriers, which would provide essentially more benefit for all entities that trade within these low-cost markets. So again, if we think from a supply chain perspective, triggering a trade war based on tariffs is a very risky move, and ultimately it's a really costly endeavor. It introduces significant uncertainty, it disrupts established supply chains, and maybe most importantly, it just winds up increasing costs for businesses and consumers like you and me. So it does it by, again, direct tax on the import and the subsequent upward creep that we described earlier when we start to think of those domestic prices. One thing is clear, there are very few winners in this scenario, and the potential for long-term damage to our economic relationship is incredibly significant. Instead, what we should be doing is probably focusing on maybe fostering more stability and more predictable trade environments, and really get away from the past thoughts of erecting these barriers that will ultimately do nothing but, I'll say, really hurt everyone involved. End of the day, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours. If you're at all curious to learn more, you're welcome to head over to fractionalmoose.ca, where you can contact me directly. Thanks a lot for hearing me out on this. Maybe you learned something, maybe you didn't, but end of the day, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. Bye.